Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Kính bạch thầy, kính thưa toàn thể chúng. Sáng hôm nay cũng có cơ hội chia sẻ bằng tiếng Anh cho các bạn bè. Thì trước khi con chia sẻ thì con xin đại chúng mình chắp tay và niệm Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Dear respected Thai, dear Noble community, today is June 27th in the year 2021. We are in the Chuklam Monastery having our regular Sunday service. How is everyone doing today? That's great. We know that this week we have an upcoming more of like a warning warm summer coming up of 35 plus degrees Celsius. And so I hope everyone stays cool, keep yourself in the cool shade, and as well drink lots of water. Last week, Tai had shared about the teachings of the threefold trainings from the Dhammapada. And Tai had shared one of the first threefold trainings in Vietnamese. And so today, I would like to share what are these threefold trainings in English and how we as practitioners can understand it and apply it in our practice. These threefold trainings are a way of avoiding suffering, to transform our suffering, and to help us in our practice. If you ever had the chance to come to a formal lunch in a monastery, you may have been invited by the monastics to make a mudra. And a mudra is like kind of a hand sign language. And in that formal lunch, we invite you to take your left hand and make it like a mountain like this. And this seal is called the three mountains. And on your right hand, we invite you to make a mudra like this. And this mudra is called the mudra of offering. In Vietnamese, it's called Ơn Tam Sơn on your left hand, and on your right, it's called Ơn Các Tường. And so when we conduct the formal lunch, we usually have this kind of mudra in front of us. We lift up a bowl, it's in our left hand, and the mudra is in our right hand. And in this practice is a way of offering food to the Buddhas before we offer food to ourselves. And this is a very traditional formal ceremony if you ever have a chance to practice it. And I use that example for those who have done that practice, that you will know that this mudra, the three mountains, represents the threefold trainings. The first training is called precepts. And precepts, we can also define it as trainings. We like to think it like that. I believe that many people think that precepts are very strong rules. But we look at define it as trainings, and it's like a little step by step. And trainings or precepts, they can be translated as morality or ethics. What is morally right or wrong is something that each of us feel intuitively, even when we're not taught by our parents or even by our teachers. It is something that cannot be enforced from outside, but must grow out of subjective understanding of what helps others, what helps us, and what may harm others and what may harm us. And in Buddhism, these trainings that as a practitioner we may have taken or we may have heard or practiced these. And as a practitioner, we have heard and practiced the 5 mindfulness trainings. And what are these 5 mindfulness trainings? These trainings are what we vow not to kill, not to steal, not to have sexual misconduct, not to lie, and not to consume any intoxicants that may damage our body. And those are kind of briefly that I described, but if you have a chance to read those trainings thoroughly, you will see that those trainings are not just on the surface, but much more on a deeper level. And we can see that these precepts are not just for a Buddhist practitioner. Even if we are practicing a different religion, we can also practice these trainings, because these trainings are very universal and very practical to a citizen in society and in the world. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha had shared a discourse to his fellow community of 3 types of people who observes precepts and practice the trainings. And the first is someone who observes and practices training as someone who is a cow herder. And what this means is that he or she, every day, they take care of the cows. They release a certain amount of cows out of their stable. Some go out into the field to eat, to enjoy the sunshine. And there are some who stay inside to be kept safe or to stay cool from the heat. And as a cow herder, they manage a certain amount of cows who's allowed to go out and who's allowed to stay in. And as they allow that, if they're more aware, more attentive, then they'll recognize that there are some cows who are malnourished. They need more food, they need more time to be outside. Or maybe there are some cows who need to be kept inside to be kept away from the heat. And so if a practitioner who practices as a cow herder, who only just observes the trainings on the surface, they're just like allowing the cows going in and going out. They know a certain number that can go out and a certain amount of number that can stay in. But if that cow herder is more attentive, more mindful, more aware of his or her cows, then they know that they will treat their cows in such a way that they don't let their cows die, being malnourished, mistreated. And as a practitioner, we also have to see that the trainings are not just on a surface level. We know that we should not kill, should not steal, etc. But let's say, for example, in the first mindfulness training, we are aware of the suffering that the destruction of life can harm others. If we kill someone, we harm that person, but we also harm others around us. We dive more deeper. We vow to not to let our way of thinking of having an intention to kill or allowing others to kill. We try to stop that encouragement, but to maintain, to keep life beautiful, peaceful, to save someone's life. The second type of person that observes and practices the training is someone who observes the precepts or the trainings very strictly. In some religions or or practice groups, they tell you when you're just joining into that group, they tell you that there are very strict rules that you have to follow. And so you follow them. And maybe that rule is maybe not respecting or paying gratitude to your parents. And that is a rule that's something that's very odd for us, because why should we not respect or pay gratitude to our parents? They're the ones who raised us. They are the ones who took care of us. They are the ones who taught us. So we should learn to respect and pay gratitude. We have to be aware, why are we taking these trainings? We have to know the reason, what does this training bring about? Another example is that some Buddhist practitioners, they think that when we recite Amitabha's name, the Pure Land Buddha, in some of the sutras, they say the Pure Land Buddha originates from the West. And so some Buddhist practitioners perceive that when they invoke the Amitabha's name, they must invoke in the direction of the West, because he's from the West. But it's not like that. If we do follow that in that direction, we also have to, when we recite the Medicine Buddha, we also have to face in the direction of the east. So every time when we recite the Medicine Buddha, we have to face to the east. When we recite Amitabha's name, we face towards the west. But that's not like that. It's a lot of time. We waste a lot of time. And our practice is to practice for our mind, not in a direction. So when we're practicing for our mind, we have to think and be aware of why we take these trainings. And that's why in precept ceremonies, it's so important that the ordinees are to be able to be present, to fully listen and hear the transmitter saying each training. And when they ask you, do you make the commitment to receive, study, and practice this training? And you reply, the answer is, yes, I do. Those words are the commitment that you are willing to receive, to accept, and to practice it. And the third type of person that observes and practices that trainings is someone who is like the noble ones. If we're able to be aware of the reason why we take the trainings and uphold it, you'll be able to understand it and develop good qualities from it. An example is that in the 5th mindfulness training, it says that we should not consume alcohol or any drugs or intoxicants that may harm our body and our mind. And if we think, just like, for example, we take alcohol. If we consume alcohol, we damage our liver, we damage our well-being. We also waste a lot of money, and our actions may affect our family. If we're aware that we should not consume alcohol, we learn to save our organs, to save money, and to maintain a peaceful and happy life within our family. And sometimes we may become, if we continue to consume alcohol, become addicted and become so fixated that when we go to work, our goal is to make money and to buy alcohol. And that is not our goal. We try to save our money to pay our bills, to pay gas, to pay for food for our families. However, if there comes a time that we become sick, very ill, and the doctor tells us to take some medicine that contains some alcohol, and we as practitioners, we have taken the trainings, and we tell ourselves, I cannot take this medicine because it contains alcohol, then for sure that your sickness will get much worse if you do not take this medicine. So we have to be flexible to be able to open that training, to tell ourselves that I will take this medicine. Even though it has alcohol, I will take until my sickness has gone away. And when that sickness has gone away, I will try my best to stop from using that medicine, keep it safe, and maintain and uphold the 5th mindfulness training. And those are the 3 types of people that observe and practice the trainings that what the Buddha has shared. And if you want to live and have a peaceful life, we have to know we have to have morality, ethical conduct, and at the same time, as a practitioner who's practicing the precepts or even doesn't have taken these trainings, they've lived in society that they know that in society we should not kill, should not steal, should not cheat, should not lie, or even try to consume intoxicants. And these, if we are able to practice these, the precepts or even trainings, or these conducts or morality, we are also practicing mindfulness. If we aren't practicing precepts, we aren't practicing mindfulness. The heart of the practice is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of precepts. So in each training, the first sentence it says, aware of the suffering, so and so. And that is the first of the 3-fold trainings, precepts. And as we move on to the second fold training, it is called concentration. And concentration, there are 2 types of concentration. There's active concentration and there's selective concentration. Active concentration in Buddhism is that our mind dwells on whatever is happening in the present moment, even as it changes. And there's a poem written by a Buddhist monk, and it goes like this. The wind whistles in the bamboo, and the bamboo dances. When the wind stops, the bamboo grows still. A silver bird flies over the autumn lake. When it has passed, the lake's surface does not try to hold the image of the bird. And so we try to welcome whatever comes along. We don't think about it or long for anything else, but we dwell in the present with all our being. Whatever comes, comes, and when the object of our concentration has passed, our mind remains calm, just like the still lake. When we invite you to practice sitting meditation before we start our service, sometimes we often say that wherever thought or sound arises, recognize it, acknowledge it, invite them in, let them stay, and let it go. And return back to your breathing. You allow that thought to come in, and you acknowledge it, but you don't force, pretend, or push that thought outside of your mind. Because what happens is that when we push that thought out, sometimes it comes back much more stronger than the first time. So we gently allow that thought, that sound that comes about in our meditation to acknowledge it, recognize it, and however long they stay, we're aware of it. And when it leaves, we remain calm, following our breathing, just like the lake. And the selective concentration is that we choose one object and hold on to it. When we are focusing on solving a math problem, we have to try our best to solve that math problem. We don't procrastinate as we're trying to solve that math problem because we get distracted. We may start to watch TV or even talk on the phone, etc. But instead, we try to abandon everything else and mainly focus on solving that math problem. And I remember what Tai had taught the young monastics when we were still young in the monastery is that he said that when it's time to play, play. When it's time to study, study. So wholeheartedly, you invest in what you're doing 100% in everything that you do. If you're washing the dishes, wholeheartedly wash the dishes 100%. If you're doing work, do it with all your effort, with 100%. We don't use concentration to run away from suffering, but we concentrate to make ourselves deeply present. When people see you walking, sitting, standing in concentration, they see stability and stillness in you. And over time, that becomes a sustained concentration, which gives rise to wisdom. And finally, the third threefold trainings is wisdom. Wisdom is the mental quality to make good judgment based on our knowledge, mindfulness practice, and experience. Wisdom is gained through study and practice, whereas knowledge is not the same as wisdom, but knowledge is attained by learning new facts, learning the 5 mindfulness trainings, or even reading something from the book, and we learn from that. If we have never heard of the 5 mindfulness trainings, and we start to learn it for the first time, that is acquiring knowledge. But until we apply that 5 mindfulness trainings, we're able, if we can practice it and apply it, then we can attain wisdom and the potential to become enlightened. And there are 3 steps on how to develop wisdom. The first is to listen and learn. The second is to think and contemplate. And finally, the third is to practice and finish the task. An example is when we listen attentively when our friend is agitated. We need to know when to argue or when to hold from talking in a conflict. When we think with mindfulness, we are careful not to immediately confront him or her with our skepticism, but rather we let them say their piece, say their truth. And we wait until he or she is in a calm state of mind. And that's when we can present our point of view. We share in such a way that there is understanding and loving speech. And we use our knowledge that we have learned to develop wisdom, to provide good judgment and reasoning for us to make the right decision in order to promote harmony and happiness in the relationship. So we need to use wisdom to know what we should listen to and what we should not listen to. But we also need to know what we need to retain from what is heard and what we should not retain. When we listen with and learn with mindfulness, we think with mindfulness, and our actions goes along with mindfulness. So these threefold trainings of precepts, concentration, and wisdom helps us to avoid suffering, but also help us in our practice. If we're able to maintain or practice the 5 mindfulness trainings, we're aware that we're mindful of what we're doing. When we are in concentration, we solely focus or are aware of what's happening around us. And when the time comes when we need to use our wisdom, we use based from the knowledge that we have learned from our parents, our teachers, or from books that we have read, and we make the right decision on what we need to do in a difficult situation. And so these threefold trainings that I'd like to share to you today, and even though I could go in more depth of each of these trainings because there's much more detail to them, but given to the time, I'd like to introduce you to the practice of the threefold trainings. And these threefold trainings are also related to the Noble Eightfold Paths of right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right concentration, right mindfulness. And so I hope that I share from my sharing today on these trainings that you can also reflect in your daily life, reflect in your practice. So thank you so much, brothers and sisters, for coming to today's service. And I'd like to pass the microphone to Thai to share it for our Vietnamese Dharma talk. For our brothers and sisters who need English